University, and our friend Denis BREDIN, director of Ponant Islands Association. So thanks a lot for coming here today. We will have time enough to discuss with you about insularity and energy transition. Let me give just a couple of seconds to explain what we are trying to do so far within the Highland Commission in this specific topic. Just for you to know, our agenda is quite simple. In terms of lobbying, we will try to contribute to the CPMR action of analyzing the National Integrated Energy and Climate Plans, which is a very strategic objective for us, because you know that member states are expected to present in the framework of European Union regulation integrated energy and climate plans, and our objective, of course, is to ensure, to be sure that these plans could have a territorial dimension, and above all could have a highland and insular dimension. So this is our first priority for coming months. And then, of course, our second objective is to continue to work in order to enhance energy transition in the EU Highlands. And we are planning to do that by identifying best practice and exchange best practice among members, to develop some studies and analysis with the collaboration and the help of also a very powerful organization like Greening the Islands. And at the end of this session, we will sign a memorandum of understanding with the Greening the Islands. But at the same time, we will try to develop also a specific strategy for project design and implementation. And just for you to know, we have recently submitted a proposal under the Horizon 2020 program in order to develop or to contribute to develop a Highlands facility. But you are aware about this, and we will have the opportunity to talk this evening if you want. And last but not least, I would like, with your help, also to organize specific seminars dealing with this issue or opportunity of energy transition in the islands. So we will have the opportunity about this in coming months a week. So thanks a lot for your attention. I give the floor to the first speaker. Jesper, please share with us your experience. You have the floor.
Thank you, Giuseppe, and I'm very happy to join you here today with the CPMR and Commission. I have met a lot of distinguished guests and also a lot of experienced colleagues, and I'm very happy to be sharing my experiences with you and also have a fruitful partnership in the future. So the topic today is energy transition, and it's kind of a broad question because it's not only about energy, it's also about growth, it's about sustainability, it's about development, which all depend on us having reliable energy at hand at all times. And this is a key issue, a key factor for my island of Gotland, and especially together with the question of water supply. We have experienced in the past some dry seasons, and we can notice that they are becoming much more frequent. We know that climate change is actually already here, and we all know that desalination is going to have to be one part of the solution, and it's a very energy dependent process. So we need to both find solutions for energy and also for water. Especially during the tourist season, I can add, if we have as little rain this year as last year, our last drop of water is to be used at the 10th of June. So you can imagine us having some quarreling and discussing regarding water supply and also energy efficiency. I can also mention shortly that our goal is not to only continue to be an island of 59,000 inhabitants and having a big tourist season. We also have, goals to increase our population to 65,000 people in just 6 years, and also to benefit from growth in tourism also in the future. So it's a tremendous challenge, and it's also growing. Is it the other way? Yeah. So this is our townhouse, our city hall, and one can hope that all of the decisions could be made in there because a lot of bright people are working there. But then again, you know that the national level affect us very much when it comes to legislation and budget, and the same thing can be said about the EU. And I can just mention shortly that our vision for the energy supply was set in 2014, and it goes like this. Local supply of renewable and recycled energy meet the total energy usage in the society of Gotland, including the industrial need. And I must say that this is a great ambition, because on Gotland, on the northern part, we have the largest cement plant producer in the north of Europe, and electrifying their processes could, you know, severely lower the national numbers for CO2 emissions. We also have an energy plan which states that by 2020 we want to produce double the amount of demand of electricity with only renewables, and we are on the path, but we are not already there. And these are just our local targets. We all know that 2015 we had a thing called the Paris Agreement, a result from COP21, where I was in attendance, actually the only participant from Gotland. And the goal there is to limit climate change to 2 degrees Celsius with an aim for 1.5%. And I must say that Gotland as a community and as a local government is committed to actually doing our part in that work. In 2016, the Swedish government and some other parties formed a energy agreement that clearly stated that decarbonization and effectivity is the 2 ways to go in the future. In 2017, the National Board on Climate Goals adopted new climate targets which said that Sweden is to have 0 emissions not by 2050 but by 2045. And that is, of course, including CCS and bio-CCS, but nevertheless, it's a very ambitious goal, and as a part of Sweden, we have to take that in consideration. So, the question is, can Gotland actually do all of this by itself? And the answer is actually no. We have to work on all levels with multi-level governance, locally, nationally, internationally, to make sure that change is not only something that we are talking about, but something that is actually going to happen. And we have a few cooperations and partnerships in Sweden that I think are of interest. One is with the National Energy Agency, which in 2017 decided that we were to be a pilot region for self-sustainability on renewables. They are on a mission to create a roadmap, and in a few weeks they are going to present it, which we are of course very excited about. Hopefully they will also give some directions to our national government when it comes to secure the funding and not only setting out the course. We are also part of a new initiative, the Clean Energy for EU Islands initiative, which is an amazing opportunity to spread best practices, to make sure knowledge is not only had but also shared. And we want to be the green island, sort of a green hub in the middle of the Baltic Sea when it comes to renewable, green, reliable energy. And I think working on all levels is actually key. It's sort of a banana skid theory that if you always talk about renewables, whoever you meet, one day you're going to find someone who maybe has the solution and wants to cooperate when it comes to those issues. But then again, we don't only have ambitious goals and numerous partnerships. We also have to take into consideration what are our assets, what resources do we have at hand to make sure that we can actually come closer to meeting the ambitious goals that we and our national government have set. One of our key assets is actually wind power. We have installed about 180 megawatts of capacity, and the largest wind turbine farm in Sweden is actually located on the southern part of Gotland. This equals about 50% of our energy consumption annually, and we're looking forward to increasing that number in the future. But we are sort of running out of space. If we want to protect biodiversity, we are going to have to look into offshore platforms in the future, which is going to be of critical importance when it comes to reaching our goals. I can also say that in the beginning of the wind turbine evolution on Gotland, we had a lot of small cooperations. Around 2,000 households on Gotland, which is an island with 59,000 inhabitants, are actually shareholders in wind turbines. So that was the first step. The second step now, with the second generation of turbines, is that larger and larger corporations are buying into them. And I am happy to say that both the small producers and the larger ones are actively working together in something that's called the Wind Producers Organization. And together they are doing projects which are partly funded by the National Energy Agency and also by the EU Structural Development Fund, which is an important source of funding. We also have an industry when it comes to biofuel, which we are looking forward to expand, mainly for heating, I would say. We collect the wood chips from sawmill residue, which is a surplus that can't really be used for much else. So the wood pellets from a sawmill in Klintehamn account for 1/3 of our annual consumption when it comes to heating. We also have a lot of small producers, but I think in the future we're going to have to look to find some scale in the economy to make sure that we can contribute with 100%. Right now, 100% of our heating comes from renewables, but it's not all renewables from Gotland. And looking forward, we want to have renewables from Gotland so that the self-sustainability leg of things is working. I can also say that the local government, Region Gotland, holds around 500,000 square meters of premises, which is offices and other facilities. And going from oil-based heating to biofuel-based heating, we have actually reduced our carbon footprint by 90% since 1995, which is of course a tremendous task, but also great results. Then again, we're an island, and having connections with the mainland is of utter importance. It comes to the ports, to the airports, but also when it comes to the cables. They are our lifelines to the mainland, and in 1950 we had the first cable, which was a one-way cable to give energy to Gotland. In 1980 we got the two-way possibility so that we could both import and export electricity. And this is important because as we move towards large-scale wind power, around 15 to 20 of our excess production can be put in the grid on the mainland. And seeing as large-scale energy storage isn't really something we can invest in right now, but it's something of the future. It's not something we can build right now, but it's something that we can and should plan for. And I think this is an important topic to discuss, actually, when it comes to Gotland, that even if we are to become self-sustainable on renewable energy, that does not mean that we want to be cut off from the mainland, because even if we want to produce 100% of the energy that we consume during 1 year, we cannot produce 100% exactly at any given minute. Some days we can only produce 80%, and some days we want to produce 150%. So we want the capability to both give and take. And this is actually one of the biggest questions on Gotland right now, and has been for more than 1 year, because the two cables we have right now are very old and will not live forever. In just 10 or 15 years, their technical lifetime is done and accounted for, and we're going to have to need a new cable. Before I was in local politics, I was in the Swedish Parliament working on the Committee on Environment and Agriculture, and you can imagine being a legislator when you have to pass a law that people in your constituency don't really like, you can get maybe 40 or 50 angry emails. But when the government made the decision to not build a third cable, maybe 20 times as many emails, because this is actually our lifeline, and power shortages and cutouts are, well, not something people want to live with in the 21st and 22nd century. The last thing I want to address is actually transport. Of course, transport is one of the biggest polluters in Sweden, since our electricity grid is almost free of carbon emissions. And actually, in just last week, we had the delivery of our new ferry, which is going to be run on LNG instead of the old diesel. So you can imagine that this has a tremendous impact on Gotland, considering that we have an year-round ferry of several thousand tons running at 28 knots forward and backwards with both people and goods. So I'm very happy to look forward to the results of the LNG. I can also say that some people might think, why didn't you buy an electric ferry? But one important lesson when it comes to the politics of energy is to not let the best be the enemy of something that is good. Every step towards renewable energy is very welcome. Another area is public transport. Right now we have CNG-powered buses in our biggest town of Visby. We don't yet have CNG-powered buses on the more rural parts of Gotland, but looking forward, we are about to invest in a wastewater plant, which together with local food companies will produce a lot of biogas and CNG. Right now we have around 200 cars in our region Gotland that the local government owns, which run on CNG, but maybe we have to look into other sources of energy in the future, since very few car manufacturers right now are looking into biogas. A lot of them are looking into electrification. So we have the infrastructure for biogas and CNG, but looking forward 20, 30 years ahead, that might be a different question. Lastly, of course, flight is also very important for Gotland. When it comes to the fast transports to our capital, we don't really have the capability to go by train, and the ferry takes, even if it does 28 knots, it takes around 3 hours to get to the mainland. So flight and aviation is obviously key, and I'm happy to announce that one of our 2 airlines is actually offering consumers the option to buy biofuel. So for an additional cost, when you fly to or from Gotland, you can actually buy your seat, something equivalent to your seat's consumption of biogas. So the company then biofuel. So the company then buys biofuel and uses on flights in Sweden, which is actually very cool. And hopefully the free enterprise and the competition will make sure that the other airline follows shortly. And that's what I had to share with you today.
Thanks a lot, Jesper. So we move to the next speaker, Gianni. You have the floor. I know that you would like to play the role of a one-man show, so... yes, remote control. Okay.
And also
the microphone, yes.
Thank you very much. Just to change, to be more interactive anyway. And thank you very much, first of all, to CPMR. I think the role is critical anyway, to have one voice of governments in this case islands in front of the European Commission is very important, as well as also GreeningTheIslands is trying to join also the industry world anyway. And thank you for the invitation anyway. Actually, GreeningTheIslands, I want to give a clear message who it is GreeningTheIslands. GreeningTheIslands target self-sufficiency and sustainability of islands worldwide. We are anyway target the islands from all over the world. Of course, we are European, and our goal is to match needs and solutions through the cooperation between all the key stakeholders. And how we do key stakeholders, authorities, business, citizens, academia, we do this through conferences. We start in 2014. We have a web app, we have an academy, we have an observatory. The observatory has one target. It's a permanent table of key stakeholders that aims at align strategies of governments and industry. Many times, of course, there are a lot of action plans, sustainable action plans, but to have the view of the industry that have to apply the sustainable action plans is very important, because there are a lot of action plans that are very good for communication, but in reality the industry cannot implement. And the same, the industry need to understand what is the target of the island in order to islands in order to address strategies. If industry can implement a long-term strategy, can really invest more. Otherwise, if you have not a long-term plan and there is not a clear vision, industry cannot anyway take the risk of investing for 1-2 years. Need to have a long-term investment plan. And so the observatory started anyway last year, and this is the right moment to start. And there's a target every year. There are 2 branches of the observatory. The first one is to select a number of islands. Of course, we cannot make study every year on a big number of islands, but every year from 3 to 6 islands, and every year change, and to study, of course, the status of islands, policies and regulations, in order to make also benchmarking, incentive schemes, permitting, which is one of the key obstacles of the industry. The technology is there, but in reality permitting is the problem. As the permitting has a cost, sometimes very high compared to the technology. Anyway, that make a feasibility study convenient or not is a real cost. We want to identify projects in those islands, and we want to do a pre-feasibility study on those projects. Because as you know, there is a gap when you have ideas and when the investors come. You need to give to investors an idea of how much profitable can be in investments, or you need to really see if a project, it makes sense to apply for a European calls, etc. And on those projects, we need to find the money anyway for those projects. And we, of course, we release the recommendation, the carbonization plans, best practice, and of course we need to link, and I have my friend here anyway from OTIE, we are started a collaboration. We really target those islands as green destinations. Sustainable tourism is the only way to engage the population, to engage the industry of the companies of an island that is mainly tourism anyway. And the islands we have selected already this year is one is Crete, the other is archipelago of Egadi in Italy, under the municipality of Favignana. There is Helgoland in Germany. And there is, as we are global, we want to have also somebody from outside, learning from Europe. We have Boracay from Philippines, and we are looking for our other 2 islands, one in the Caribbean and one in Africa. But we already started in the European ones and in Boracay. And we did a first meeting, very successful, in Crete. I have to thank also the Crete representative, because we really had a very good example of how all the key stakeholders were there. 35 people, decision makers, all the utilities, from Athens, all Greece, all the environmental representative, etc., the departments on energy, water, mobility, and waste. We had the universities. We had 2 days of workshop, try to understand what are the real need for Crete to make the challenge, because as it is the energy case session, anyway, Crete has already a very good percentage of renewables. Anyway, we are between 20 and 24%. Anyway, so the challenge is how the grid can go beyond to this percentage, of course. And of course, we have identified some target for the study where the industry give suggestions and proposals. Like, for instance, hybridize the thermal plant. There are 3 thermal plants with diesel, and if you put the solar panels or the wind next to the thermal plant, you do not affect the grid, because the electricity starts already from there, instead of produced by diesel plus renewables. So you are not affecting completely the grid in that case. If you increase self-consumption, if you create energy communities where you can share the energy, and the energy is consumed in a neighbors, anyway, you don't affect the grid. So this really is a way of going beyond the 24%, and so on. Anyway, digitalization, etc. So we have target energy efficiency of hotels, etc. Anyway, the first source of energy is saving. 11% of the energy saving. Anyway, they can really save if you have a good approach, even 11% of your energy. So is smart grid. So we have target some topics, as well as in the water, like water loss, because in reality also in the water you have to save the energy. Hitachi was there anyway making proposal, other companies, Xant, etc. were making proposal in order to monitor, because in reality in many islands 50% of the water that in islands has an high cost is lost. Is unbelievable. Anyway, so if you save the water anyway, and there are of course a lot of islands where the water arrive with a tank, while desalinate the water in the place is much cheaper anyway, and so on. All mobility, we have identified all the topics we are going to address with the industry and the governments, like my pilots, of course, on car sharing, electrification of ports, and of course create also a web app to support the use of electric vehicles, and so on. As well on waste, we have identified the target. I go very fast because I want to touch all the topics. The presentation will be available. We'll have other meeting in Helgoland in the 23 and 24 of April, and we'll have also a meeting in Favignana in 28, 29 of May anyway. So our observatory target is identify project, try to find the financing opportunities, and of course promote the islands, the green tourist, etc. You see here we have already a lot of industry association. The Global Association, European Association, Solar PV Industry is our member. We have the Wind Association, we have the European Association of Batteries inside, we have a big corporate inside, etc. So we group and a lot of industry to give input to you anyway for your plan. And of course the other leg of the observatory is the global index that we are discussing, to create a European index as well, in order to do a ranking of the best sustainable islands crossing the sector altogether. And we have a questionnaire which is already online on energy, water, mobility, waste and environment that everybody of any government can apply, and we can do a ranking of islands. And of course we have the academia to build capabilities in the islands. We have launched the other day anyway, doing training, the campaign for kids to prepare the new generation, anyway, to understand about climate change and behavior influencing also the family. And we said that islands need to be innovative, and we need to be the first innovative. And we have developed for you is years of work a web app. Greening the Islands web app. You can download in your mobile, you can see through your computer, and this web app has the target to disseminate best practice. You as government can place a best practice in the web app, and all the others can see. You can connect, like LinkedIn, there is a web app for island stakeholders. So please download, please connect, please create forums with the people you want to share a document, legislation, etc. It's a way of breaking barriers and saving time, because islands are far, and through internet we need to really accelerate communication. We have done, of course, a lot of conferences. We have a Greening the Islands Awards. It's the 5th edition with a jury made by UNESCO, by IRENA, and every year we reward the most deserving projects. I'd like to conclude my presentation with a few slides on really some contents on the energy. Anyway, energy, islands are, as you said, isolated, but there are a lot of islands we have seen that are targeting a high percentage of self-sufficiency with renewables. And anyway, the typical problems, of course, you mentioned the seasonal variation of population, the high fuel cost. Of course, you have to place a lot of engines in order to secure the supply, almost double of what is needed, etc. And of course, we have a problem of programmation of renewables need storage to be, of course, and this is the progress, of course, of an energy transition from putting a PV, adding, of course, a storage system, but adding also the software, which is very important. And we are moving from a centralized system. Now we are in the position present of mixed system, where we have central production and distributed. But the future of tomorrow is this one, which is a distributed interconnected system, where you have aggregators, as I said, where really neighbors exchange through cloud, anyway, the energy. The battery cost, which is the core of our challenge, is really down, and the electromobility can support the energy sector, because the cars can be, when are parked in the night, can function as a battery for the energy, also for the house. And batteries, the technology is improving in a way that batteries are smaller and they can produce more energy. So the energy density is very high. And you can see here that a lot of investment in this moment are going to digitalization, which is the new frontier. Digitalization allows the transition to electric vector and the implementation of smart grid, the aggregators, and the vehicle to grid that was mentioned before. And to conclude, this is the last chart. You are governments, and there is a policy which is very nice. A lot of islands are running with diesel or gas, and there is a legislation in Italy for islands that take the money from the budget for diesel to finance renewables with the saving of the diesel budget, because renewables are 2 times cheaper than diesel. So if you have a budget, this is a legislation that is going to be operative in 2 months, is already in place, has been 5 years work. So the DG Energy came to Rome to listen this legislation, and is trying to push in all countries. Just to give you some numbers, Spain is spending 1.8 billion per year to incentivize fossil fuels. And this incentive really is despite the renewables are much cheaper, is an obstacle for renewables to enter. Regulation is very important. Policy is very important. Greece is spending 1 billion per year, almost, for incentivize fossil fuel. And so renewables doesn't need incentives. Simply, governments has to stop to incentivize fossil fuel. So I give you with this chart, you can see this. I can give you information about this policy, but I'm very happy of this cooperation with CPMR because it's very important, because we need to break barriers between the industry world, the innovation, and the governments. So I hope, anyway, we are creating an access between governments and industry to cooperate for one goal. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot to our special one-man show. So we move to the next speaker, Denis BREDIN. So you have the floor.
Should I take this one or I? And this one is. This one is.
Thank you.
It's forward, yeah. Okay, you find it. Yeah. Okay, thank you for being able to come here and make a presentation for you and in this very interesting audience. What I'll try to do is to try to give an example of an energy vision, a kind of scenario for an island called Samsoe in Denmark, which has 100% renewable energy already now. And you don't have to be afraid that I will go into a lot of technical details and things like that, which is quite boring, and I can't answer if you have a lot of questions as well. But the reason why it's also interesting maybe to have this as a case is that what we are experiencing now is that the renewable energy in Denmark is coming up in very big offshore parks being in tendering processes, meaning that all the offshore parks are going now to the North Sea and some of the Baltic Sea, and then we will have a lot of transmission lines that people don't like a lot, which is really costly. So with this process of tendering, we are losing this balance of energy, local energy systems. And so that's a kind of not so good development we're seeing now. And you can understand why you do it, because you want to have competition between tendering, and so you have the small prices, but then often the other consumers have to pay the transmission lines. So it's another one who pay it, and they also have to live with all these transmission lines. So this is a dangerous development. So therefore, islands are very important to show the way also for the big systems, that you need to have balance on the electricity side. And electricity is growing now and going to be the key issue for the whole sector of transport and also heating. So that's why it's very important. Yeah. And just a little bit about Aalborg University made this scenario. They are doing some really big projects for European Commission on energy planning, trying to develop models for whole Europe. And they have mapped all Europe energy demands and supply sectors, and also made some the Petra project. So they play, I think, quite an important role in developing the European scene on energy planning, and so the Commission is following what the planning department in Aalborg is doing together with a lot of other European partners. Rather tight, I think, because I think they are doing some very good work on that one, this issue. But then I'll just come back to a small island of Samsoe, and it has 3,700 inhabitants. And it has a lot of tourists, as you can say, 120,000, 140,000 tourists, 114 square meters. It's grid connected to the island. It's small Denmark, so we don't have a non-grid connection. And then the main income from this country, for this island, is agriculture and vegetables, because it has a good climate for vegetables. It's tourism and wind power. So wind power is now going, it's really a big export issue income from the island. So that's just for your information, so that can also be important. What we have now already on this, because it has been working for many years with these energy issues, with a very strong local commitment and strong local ownership to most of the energy plants. So they have electricity consumption, but they have a rather big wind power already installed of 35 megawatt. 23 megawatt of those is an offshore wind park, small one outside of the island. They have district heating on straw. They have chips and solar district heating system. They have, they have a lot of oil boilers still, but they also have heat pumps increasing. They have a ferry on LNG and oil. So that's the big issue, of course, is the transport. And with cars, it's not very good. It's with a lot of normal cars. But it's already now CO2 neutral, the island, because the export from the wind turbines is equal to the import of oil for the transport and things. Back to this, then I'll try to explain a little bit the vision we tried to develop for the island. Of course, we want to reduce the heat demand with 20%, increase the wind power, increase PV. Wind power is going to be used for heat and power instead of biomass. We want to also have a lot of heat pumps, so we kick out all these oil burners, and also for the district heating we want to use big heat pumps using electricity produced by wind turbines. And then, of course, the big challenge for us and for everybody is the transport sector. I'll come back to that, to the scenario, because then we have tried to work a little bit on that one, because our zero CO2 scenario is including the transport, including the ferries also. And then we use this modeling tool, Energy Plan. I don't want to go into it. I probably can't explain it good enough if you ask me. And then it's a simulation tool where you try to find out a technology mix that you believe in, and then you calculate on them and how it would develop. It's not an optimization tool as such. Then, who can find out about that? But okay, these are the socio-economic costs coming out of this model. And what it shows is that we have different scenarios of wind and more wind and less wind and district heating connected, and especially in the sea in the end, it's a lot of different solutions on bio solutions for transport. I don't want to go through them because there's a lot of insecurity on that, so therefore we wanted to make some calculations of that. What's important is that you see that the socioeconomic costs are more or less the same for the scenarios. It's not dramatically changing. And some of the scenarios, if you see the last, the one to the right, then you see that there's no fossil fuels in them at all. They are free of fossil fuels because we use all these technologies from transport. And we have, on the orange small one down there, you see the export of electricity from the island. As an income. Yeah. So that's one of the results of some of these scenarios. And then you also see the fuel consumption that when you work with these transport solutions of different types, of course electric vehicles, biodiesel or hydrogen, different type of gas produced from biomass, then you end up with no fossil fuel consumption. As you see there. So there you are CO2 free. That is also manifested in these scenarios that if you work with these transport solutions, then you end up with zero CO2 emission. I don't want to go into that. This table, it's not so interesting. This is just an example of what has been happening already. It's erecting the offshore wind park. I was the project leader for installing that, for establishing this offshore park. That was really big. It's really interesting and also a little bit nervous because it was only 95% of the investment were local investment. And it's a little bit risky sometimes when you install an offshore park. And if you have to go to the municipality and say, okay, now you have to invest 100 million euros extra because we found a lot of problems. But we succeeded in making it very, very cheap. Now, the cost for this offshore park is the same cost more or less as onshore wind parks nowadays are. We were able to make this as a very cost-efficient investment. So that's small can be beautiful. So here you see this wind park outside south of Samsoe. What I want to end up with is to say also that there are new EU calls now on the way, and from Aalborg University we would like to cooperate with islands who want to go into some of the new calls, also trying to offer our planning tools for that. And there are two calls, one on transition islands, which are small islands converting from a lot of fossil fuel consumption to zero. So that needs to be a small island which can do that dramatically. I can't really think about any Danish islands who can do it, which can do it. But I think we could be interested anyway to be part of a consortium for doing that, to see about that. As we were a partner together with you on the island facility application, we'll see how that goes. And then also we will go for the geographical islands call in February 2020, and that it will be together with ENER, which is another, I could say, well-known renewable energy island in Denmark with about 6,000 inhabitants. And they have reduced already 44% of their CO2 emissions in 10 years' time. They have quite a lot of, some wind power. They used to have the world's largest solar system, thermal solar system with a seasonal storage, but now that has been over. There are some bigger ones even that I was involved in that project too. And what we also have, which is very special now, we have the world's largest electric ferry produced by a local shipyard. And it should be running here in February 2019, but they have to postpone it to June 2019. And I hope the politician in area that it's not postponed anymore, because I think the citizens are not very happy about that. But we want to make a new energy vision for the island for this, when we have this call here, and to develop further, where we want to go for CO2 neutrality in 2025 and 100% renewable energy in 2030, where the focus on energy storage and using maybe some more e-ferries also for some of the other lines, more PV, and especially also, of course, heat storage with batteries and maybe other technologies. So that's an invitation for some islands here which could maybe be interested to join such a consortium. And here you see the ferry is built. It's the biggest in the world e-ferry. You see it here in the harbor. It cannot sail yet. Maybe it can sail, but not very well. But it will be sailing if you go there for holidays in this summer. And it can take 31 cars. It has a capacity of 4.3 megawatt hours, which is the absolutely biggest battery in the world of this type. It has, so it's a really interesting thing. Also with a local shipyard being the builder of it, I think that's also quite interesting. So maybe we could also, you could think that this could be interesting for you also to join a cooperation on learning from this experience. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Hans, for your presentation. Very interesting, and your proposal of a collaboration. We move to the next speaker. Denis, you have the floor. Do you need remote control, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Bonjour à tous, et encore une fois, tous mes remerciements à la CRPM pour son invitation et la possibilité de présenter donc.
Thank you for the invitation. It allows us to talk about our own experience. Can you all hear me? First of all, I would like to present the network of Ponant Islands. Just to see the geography of it, it is a complex of islands situated between the Atlantic and the United Kingdom. We are a conference of mayors created in 1971 in order to address insularity and the problems related to it. So this effort is quite important. Our actions have been very intensive. Now I will present part of our island policy. Especially I will talk about non-interconnected islands. We talked about energy connection of the islands, but there are problems such as in the island of Seine, Molène, and Ouessant, which are not energy connected. So let's take a look at the problem in these islands. They are very exposed. The island of Seine has a mean altitude of 2.35 meters, and the residents are very willing to find ways to tackle climate change, particularly because the altitude is very low. Maximum altitude is only 9 meters. Also, we have the island of Molène. The mean altitude is 13 meters from the surface of the sea, and the maximum is 26 meters, and only 210 residents. And the most remote island is the island of Ouessant. The surface is bigger, 15 square kilometers. Mean altitude 20 meters. Maximum altitude is 61 meters. It is slightly higher, so the problems are slightly fewer. About 900 residents. So let's take a look at how we addressed the energy regime of these islands. In 2012, we tried to establish a commitment for the energy transition of these three islands. So here we are in 2015, where the mayors of the islands, with the assistance of the ministers back then and the region of Bretagne, wanted to find joint solutions. The objective is very ambitious. It's for 2013, and the joint objective for these three communities is to have energy autonomy, energy sufficiency, including, of course, the region of Bretagne and the communities. Of course, we have some companies that are involved. For example, EDF, ENER, Sabella, a startup which works with a combination of water power. So we started with classic practices in 2015. 2015 to 2018, we focused on the reduction of consumption. We substituted traditional lamps, and we introduced LED lights. Some other actions as well, which were related to the replacement of lamps in houses. There were incentives in order for residents to change their lamps, and we managed to save a lot of energy, electric energy. Then we replaced old refrigerators with A2+ or A3+ refrigerators. And a very big action is about the energy efficiency of homes. 12% of homes on these islands, on these three islands, were involved in the project of energy efficiency. 105 houses changed their energy efficiency, and we managed to save a lot of energy on an annual level. We also focused on the installation of PV panels on public buildings. You can see the pictures on the left of the screen. Moreover, I would like to show you a picture. Can you imagine the power of sea current? So we needed to find ways to take advantage of it. Hydro wind energy had very good result. At the end of this week or next week, there will be a new agreement that will allow us to produce even more hydro wind power thanks to this prototype that you can see on the picture. It was first commissioned in 2016. The current was very strong, so we created this hydro wind energy production system. This system started back then, and now we are able to produce 30 megawatt hours per month, starting from October 2018. Of course, we need to be able to store this energy, and this was a challenge as well. So we created a battery system on the Sun Island. This installation was created in June 2017. Also, there is a pilot system of batteries installed on the island of Ouessant in September 2017. So we led by example. We wanted other communities to follow, because the biggest problem is not only to produce energy, but also the storage of this energy. So awareness raising among visitors, guests of the islands is very important, because you understand that we have created new conditions on the island, and now we can pass the message that there are new alternative processes, the so-called eco-movements. So we invite tourists also to try to save energy. So from 2015 to 2018, we all decided to collectively use the measures to raise awareness among people. We started with the region of Bretagne, which allowed us to start an awareness-raising campaign and gave 200 million for this campaign in order to bring specific results. And this has helped us improve storage conditions as well. So now we have money that allow us to better operate. The entire investment amounts to 2 million, and this was very helpful in order to install hydro wind power in this corner of the channel. So more than 120 megawatt hours are saved per year. We have reduced CO2 emissions by 1,690 tons. Also, we have saved 630 cubic meters of fuel per year. And I think these results are exceptional. So this process and this hydro wind power had very good results, and this original system had a very good, a very positive impact. Of course, that's not the end of it. We were faced with two difficulties in 2015, The first one was fair competition regulations of the EU. We realized that it's not that simple. There was a big cost for the islands, that it was an overcharge of more than 39%. Also for unconnected zones, there was an extra compulsory tariff to be taken into account. So very specific challenges that create even more problems for investors of PV panels, for example. Renewable energy sources are the future, and they need to be taken into account. Another problem is the regulatory framework that protect the environment and natural beauties and the cultural footprint. And sometimes this was not facilitating investments. In so small islands with only 2 kilometers of coast, it is very difficult to create such infrastructure that clearly infringe natural beauty and maybe do not protect the environment, because there is no room to create such installations. This is why we needed to find effective solutions, starting with solutions that would allow us not to breach the fair competition rules. Now, when it comes to legislative amendments, since November 2018, there is a new law that provides with a wider range of development for such renewable energy sources on islands. This means that there are more future prospects through a long-term planning for energy transitions on the islands. And just to demonstrate the difference between 2014 and 2017, the cost used to be high, and the cost was reduced by 45 euros per megawatt hour. So thanks to the energy transition, we managed to reduce the cost per megawatt hour. On the Molen Island, there is currently a project underway, and the objective for 2023 is to have 30% saving, and by 2020 we want to have 90% of the power produced by PV panels. You can also see the objectives for the island of Seine. We have been authorized to install a wind farm, and the objective is to produce 75% of energy from this wind farm. When it comes to the island of Ouessant, we have this mixture of energy that I talked about, the hydro-wind power. So the objective is to have reached 75% of power produced through this system. We seek to further disseminate these systems on other islands as well. Therefore, the other islands have also managed to save energy. They already save 934 megawatt hours per year. The outcome is exceptional, and we all need to understand that the energy combination is very important. Now we are talking about 900 grams of CO2 per year, and this was an amazing improvement. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Denis, pour cette
Thank you very much. Very good presentation. We're very back on our agenda, so now if there are any questions, but please only if you have very imperative or urgent questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to just let you know, the members of the Islands Commission, that as of the 19th of March, the day before yesterday, the European Commission announced a competition to reward islands for local renewable energy production. Commissioner Moedas said that there will be 3 winning islands out of this competition. The first prize is €500,000. The second prize is €250,000, and the third prize is €100,000. The Commissioner said that islands are perfect test labs for the deployment of innovative energy technologies, and he hopes that this new prize will encourage many islands and other small communities to rethink the way they produce and consume energy. The prize is funded by Horizon 2020, and applications opened yesterday with a deadline for applications the 26th of September 2019, and the prizes to be awarded in early 2020. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Panos, for this interesting information. One question? Oui, okay.
Oui, quelques mots simplement d'abord pour saluer.
A few words. First of all, I would like to say that all the interventions and speeches and presentations this morning have been excellent. I would also like us to focus more on the explanations given and speak a bit more politically about waste and energy. I believe that this is where the stakes are high for islands and European islands in particular. I'm not just talking about abstract things. I'm talking about stakes that are burdensome politically wise as well as society-wise and budget-wise. I'm talking about choices made by the citizens or the cities, and those are questions that the citizens keep asking and asking. So this is a challenge. I believe that we must truly consider the totality of all those issues and create the right working framework of a CPMR in order to formulate concrete proposals with regards to better waste management and to find the right balance in waste management systems in the regions and islands. So we need to be pioneers, not only as to the requirements of our citizens, but in light of the broader things that are at stake on our islands. During lunch, I discussed with many people, and I don't think that we are all on the same page or in the same situation. There are many islands and regions, more densely populated areas that have inherited systems that are obsolete. And those systems make them dependent, entirely dependent, energy-wise, from fuel, fossil fuel, at an additional cost that is very important, needless to talk about, of course. The compensatory programs. And of course, when we talk about waste management on an island, we don't have many options. We avoid waste production, or we export waste, or we burn it down, or we store it. That's all. That's all the options that are available. So if we let some options aside, because some of them are not environment friendly, we cannot export our waste, or in any case, if this is not what we want to adopt as a model, then, particularly on the islands, this is a financial model that cannot be effective. No. Of course, we need to find innovative solutions. Let's see what's happening in the north or in other islands that have inherited other systems that are more flexible in areas that are not as heavily populated. And Giuseppe, I believe that there's much and substantial work to be done if we manage to be able to present a united front, saying that when it comes to waste management and energy autonomy and independence, particularly in the non-interconnected zones, we will be able to create a financially viable system. And then, if we achieve that, then we will be able to add better status in our endeavors. And when it comes to benchmarking, we will be able to reciprocate our approaches and adapt them, of course, to all the scenarios, because we cannot start about everything. For example, we don't have floods in the Mediterranean in order to generate energy from there, as they do in Bretagne. So maybe we could find other solutions. So we connect energy with pipes that are located at specific depth and have a specific diameter, and sometimes we have problems with the fact that those cables are overheated. At Corsica, for example, there are other problems, or we have other models that are entirely independent, so I think we need to look into those best practices. Yes, you're right, President, we're going to obey to that. Let us now think, brainstorm on that. When I see what the Ponant Islands did without a legal framework, because I understand that you are in a session of elected officials, right? And you can see that we can truly move forward. When we listened to our colleague before, we listened to our colleagues who talked about what they did, about waste management, following a specific program on the basis of scientists and organizations. I believe that there's a huge dynamics in order to opt for economically viable and environmentally friendly solutions. I would just like to say that the determining factor in our case has been the support by the region of Bretagne.
I'm sorry, but we are really running out of the time, so we close this session. I thanks a lot all the panels for your presentation and comments, etc., and the proposal, of course. We will sing the Memorandum of Understanding, maybe in another room, and we move to the next session. So I invite the moderator, Eleni, and all the other panelists to come to the floor.